What's up everybody, Unrested here, and today you can see on the JFAQ news page I had a question posted that said ask JNEWS questions right here. You could go ahead and post them. And unfortunately I only got 3 people who posted questions, so I'm guessing this new format is a little confusing to some people. Pretty much I'm gonna have 2 pictures. One picture says ask JNEWS and one says ask JFAQ. When it's JNEWS you ask Japanese news related questions of current topics and events that are in the newspaper here. You can look them all up online. You don't have to have access to a Japanese newspaper. Over here is a battle arena that I made out of paper. It's completely unrelated to JNEWS, but I thought I'd just show it because it's behind me and I just finished it. Anyway, let's move on to some actual news. Alright, starting with the #1 topic that's topping all the papers here in Japan this morning. It's the 68th anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing. Obviously, this commemorates the time in which America dropped an A-bomb on Hiroshima. This is pretty much a gathering of people who obviously talk about the horrors of the bomb and in turn also promote the complete eradication of nuclear weapons everywhere. There is a special torch that is lit there, and it is lit at all times. That torch will not be taken out until all the world's nuclear weapons are dismantled. In general, not a lot is actually done year-round as far as talking about the Hiroshima bombings. Obviously, it was a while ago. It's something that they do consider in their past. But obviously, there's a lot of people who, especially in the Hiroshima region, are very adamant about erasing nuclear weapons from the world. Understandably so. Moving on. Alright, next up we have a 56-year-old man arrested for choking his mother to death in Aichi Prefecture. Police say they arrested a 56-year-old man for choking his 77-year-old mother to death. Unfortunately, this is a case, as I've said before, that happens quite a bit. Old people killing old people, although I really don't consider 56 that old. 77 I do. I suppose it's all subjective matter of opinion and your own current age. The sad thing about this is the guy was unemployed. He had moved back in with his mom because he didn't have a job. She was taking care of him pretty much because he had little to nothing to his name, no place to stay, no place to live. Couldn't make himself food because most old school, I'm saying old school, Japanese men usually can't cook much or clean much or know even how to do like their own laundry and stuff like that because they're raised in a household where the mom does all that, like a professional house cleaner. So my guess, I mean, you know, we're not given a ton on this story. It's vague, as is most stories in Japan. My guess is that, once again, guy moves home, expects his mom to do everything for him. When she does not comply and tells him, look, you need to find a job, you know, this is temporary, you need to get there and get out of your, you know, chair, get off your ass and find something. He probably flipped out. It says that he strangled her to death over an argument. So obviously that was some kind of argument going on. My own prediction is that it dealt with the fact that he's 56 years old and still living at home with his mother. Less said, unfortunately, other situations that do happen like this are when 2 elderly people usually murder each other or murder one another or commit a suicide murder due to the fact that one gets sick of taking care of the other due to dilapidated mental state, dementia, or possibly even Alzheimer's, which is a very sad situation. You know, there really is no good that can come of that. Unfortunately, it's a situation where no one asked for help, didn't try to get help from the government, or possibly the government did not lend the help that they needed. In this situation, it sounds like an able-bodied guy was a little bit spoiled and took it out on his mother. Unfortunate for him, this ended her life and will most likely end his due to the fact that he will now go to jail. Next! Continuing on in crime, a man in Chiba was the first person to be arrested under the new anti-stalking laws that Japan has just passed. If you don't know, Japan has actually had problems with stalking in the past and has done little to nothing to actually protect the victims of stalking. Until recently, a lot of different stuff was enacted as far as covering not just things like visiting the person's house like it used to be in the past or like following that person to work, but it covers everything now, like cell phones, emails, calling them too much, all different types of multimedia that's out there today. Unfortunately, one of the things a lot of people are complaining about is that this new bill passed does not cover social networks. So if people are stalked via social network, they can't really do much about it. And this is kind of a situation that deals with our very ancient gray race as far as the old people who run this country. They have no clue, a lot of them, what Facebook or Twitter even is. They think it's a series of pipes connected underneath the ground. They unfortunately don't know how to cover that kind of stuff in a bill because they don't even know how they work. How would they write laws for it? This man who was arrested, he was a 40-year-old man, and he had been sending up to 23 emails a day to his female co-worker. This tended to happen a lot in the Kabura and the snack bar and maid cafe type situation. Obviously, an otaku gets obsessed with someone and sends them a lot of emails. Unfortunate part that comes with those jobs that those women work. But this was just an office lady working with a salaryman who decided to start stalking her, and reportedly he was finally arrested after he used an intimidating email saying that she would be in trouble if she did not date him. Hey guys, it's not the way to win over a lady's heart, let me tell ya. This guy's a perfect example. I'm not really sure why people stalk. Anyway, let's move on. Finally, in the way of crime, bills, and politics, I'd like to go over the NPA White Paper. White Paper is a report released in Japan, usually every year, that talks about social problems that Japan is dealing with and how they should address them and what are the biggest ones that are currently afflicting Japan. This paper highlighted bullying, crimes against the elderly, which obviously happens quite a bit due to how much elderly people we have here, stalking, which we just talked about, and hacking. Japan's finally starting to recognize hacking quite a bit more due to the fact that we recently had a really hardcore hacker who had this whole thing with an SD card connected to a cat that he let roam the streets. Pretty interesting story. Go find it on the internet and read about it if you'd like. This one covered a lot of different stuff on a lot of social problems dealing with bullying. Bullying has been a big problem in Japan now for many, many years, but really it came to light this past year when a boy unfortunately committed suicide after being bullied into practicing suicide daily by his classmates who would ask him to jump from the first floor of their school so he could practice jumping from the top roof, which is like 3 or 4 stories depending on the size of the school. He eventually committed suicide by jumping from his apartment complex. Those kids were eventually expelled, something very rare in Japan. And their parents are even being sued at this point, which is also very rare. Japan is not quick to sue anybody, and usually there's not a lot of money that can be won, so this is a rare occurrence. Anyway, let's move on to a lighter note. Okay, film. Let's move on to a little bit of film and talk about the stalled Akira movie is coming back to life. It appears the Akira movie that Steven Spielberg had been wanting to make is now going to be made into a live-action movie. My personal opinion on this is I fear for what the final culmination of the project will result in. I mean, let's take a look at one example, Dragon Ball Z, hideous film. First of all, my first complaint before this movie is even made is I've heard it takes place in New York, like a futuristic version of New York, when the original Akira took place in New Tokyo. So already they're changing the city, I guess because maybe their writers and everybody doesn't know a lot about Japan, which totally sucks. I'm guessing they're going to choose white people or people who are not Japanese to pretend to be Japanese. If they choose for them to totally not be Japanese at all, that's going to be super lame. But hey, whatever, you know, do what you want, Hollywood. You're good at screwing stuff up. Moving on to one more film-related clip. Clint Eastwood, that is thrilled that Japan will be doing a remake of the movie Unforgiven. Wow, call down the thunder, Japan. I'm surprised to hear this one. It appears that Ken Watanabe, who you might know from Inception, The Last Samurai, and just about any American movie that needs a Japanese guy who can speak somewhat decent English, Letters to Iwo Jima, will be starring in this one. I'm not really too sure how that's going to work out, where I've just said that I think Akira will be ruined by America. I can't see how Japan could possibly do well with Unforgiving due to the fact that that is a cowboy movie, and in case anybody didn't know this, there's no cowboys in Japan, and there never were, and there never will be. So that's strange, but okay, you know, do what you will. We'll see how that all goes. Anyway, let's move on to some questions!
Okay, it's question time, and we're going to start with Rise, who is very smart and printed a link out to his article that he is listing here, which is very smart. Thank you, Rise, for doing that. He is asking, this is regarding a woman who is suing a Yakuza boss over protection money. I read this article, so I know exactly what you're talking about. My question is, do you think the Yakuza are losing their grip on small businesses, or is this more of an isolated incident? Okay, first of all, let me just give you a little bit over on this actual clip that he put here. It's dealing with the Yakuza boss who pretty much got money out of a woman for intimidating her. I forget how much it was. I remember it was quite a bit, like 7 million yen or something like that. I'm not going to click on the link right now and read exactly how much, so don't quote me on that amount. But it was a lot, okay? And pretty much what he's asking is, like, that's petty, man. Why would you go after some old lady to get the money? So are they losing their grip that they have to go after old people? Yeah, I would say they kind of are at this point. Now, not to say they've become incredibly weak and that they're soon going to collapse under the pressure of Japan's amazing police force, because that's far from the truth. But it does seem as of recent that they are getting discovered for a lot of different, I guess, flaky choices with their dealings. As far as recently, they were busted on a huge investigation that found out that they were paying off tons of police officers, high-ranking officers, and they actually found out the amount that they were paying each one, and that the higher those police went, the more money they were making. And so that really, I guess, clipped a lot of their wings as far as their connections to, you know, the underworld and making sure that they don't get any kind of trouble from the police themselves. So I think maybe little by little they're starting to chip away at them, but at the same time, the Yakuza are kind of like a hills and valleys type mafia. I mean, sometimes they go through some dark times and seem pretty weak, but come back strong, so you never know. Okay, our other question comes from a name which I'm going to mispronounce, and I apologize already. Jia? I was reading news on Yahoo today, and I noticed in one article spoke of communism rising in Japan. It says it is because most political parties are dissolving in Japan, as well as the possible Japanese military forming. Is this true, and if so, how is it affecting Japan? Well, there's no Japanese military forming because, first of all, Japan does not have a military. It has a self-defense force. Some people would call this a military, but technically it is not. If they really wanted to have an official military, they would have to rewrite their own constitution, which was originally written by Truman back when they were defeated during World War II. This, as of yet, has not happened, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Communism, I have not heard of a lot of communist parties here in Japan, although it is completely allowed if people do want to join that. The LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, is by far the most powerful right now, so I'm not really too sure about this communist thing. There are parties dissolving, but just as quick as parties dissolve in Japan, new ones rise up. So I'm a bit iffy on that reporting. I'm not really sure where you read that. You said Yahoo. If there's any possibility you too could click a link and put one on there, I'd be really happy. Until next time, I am Unrested. Guys, I'm sorry I didn't get a lot of questions on this one. I'm thinking maybe it's because of the picture I posted. People didn't understand that that meant ask the questions. We'll see how this goes. If it becomes less and less, then I'll cut it out. But, I mean, some people seem to like it. Maybe that was just the picture's problem. Until next time, I'm Unrested. This is JNEWS.